Hello, everyone. In this episode of the Remarkable Edge Executive Power Series, I'm breaking down the exact mindset upgrade that separates enterprise level thinkers from glorified task makers. We're going to talk about the power shift model. And inside this episode, we're going to talk about why saying essential is sabotaging your scale, how to stop being the center of everything and start building systems that run without you, the strategic architecture behind the real CEO energy, and to let you know that this is not just a leadership pep talk. It is a call to rebuild your mental operating system. Hi, everyone. Dr. Vernita Glenn-White. I go by Dr. V, the Brilliant Solutionist, a strategist, executive advisor, and leadership intelligent architect for high stakes organizations. I don't just coach or consult, I systemize transformation. So, from education systems to enterprise teams, I spent 20 plus years helping high level leaders close the execution gap and build their intelligent ecosystems that scale. This show is where bold execution meets intelligent design, where elite professionals come to rethink leadership, realign performance, and build organizations that actually work. So if you're done playing by outdated rules and you're ready to architect the results that drive revenue, retention, and real influence, let's get to work. So let's talk about the disruption. And we're going to make this simple. Most people with leadership titles are still thinking like employees. Now, before you roll your eyes, I just want you to say that there is absolutely nothing wrong with employees. A lot of CEOs are technically employees of major companies, even if you're running your, even if you are at the top, you're probably in somebody else's big company, or you're the CEO of your own company. But this also works for professionals as well, because you can still build your dream life, have this mindset shift as an employee, but it's just a different way of thinking. So being a CEO of the company, however, being a CEO of a company or a leader of a department is different. But I just wanted to put that out there before we dive into this episode. I don't want you to click off and go away and say, oh my gosh, I'm still an employee. This doesn't apply to me. If you want to shift and have a leader mindset or a CEO mindset, regardless of your title, in this episode is for you. Okay, so now back to the CEOs, the C-suite, B-suite, D-suite, all those leaders, right? So what I was saying was they're not scaling, they're delegating. And if this is you, I want you to lean in. You're probably solving problems that should have already been systematized. And you're probably doing a high level version of the very same things that you were praised to do years ago, which is being reliable, being responsive, capable, all those things, but not necessarily strategic. And that's one of the key things about just focusing as an employee versus being a CEO or upper level a leader. Again, a lot of people don't want to do that, and that's totally fine. But if you're in that seat and you know what I'm talking about, comment down below whatever is resonating with you. So let me tell you what that type of mindset is costing you if you're only still operating as just reliable, just responsive and just capable. It is costing you opportunities you can't see because your head is down in the weeds. Let me know if that's you. Comment, weeds down below. Well, don't type that, but in the weeds, you can say that. Or it is costing you talent that keeps walking away because you are still the bottleneck. And it is actually costing you lost revenue from the decisions that are delayed by your need to be involved in everything. So if you're still solving the same kinds of problems you were 5 years ago, 2 years ago, or even probably 6 months ago, you're not leading, you're just maintaining. So what is the shift that you need? This is the leadership mental upgrade that you need in order to have this shift. And I know it's gonna hit you a little bit. It is to stop doing the work. I'll say it again. It is stop doing the work and start designing the system that makes the work inevitable. So that's what real CEOs, that's what they do. They're not chasing productivity. They are chasing predictability. And I know that may sound like, oh, that's boring, but boring is what scales companies and catapult, businesses, to the next level, is being predictable instead of only focusing on productivity. So you must think in systems in order to have this shift. And I know systems get thrown around like it's just some kind of buzzword, but it's really about putting things in place so that you're not always in the middle. Point blank simple, right? And you must lead through architecture instead of always just scaffolding a building. I don't know why that came to me, but you must think in terms of architecture, and then also scale with structure and not stress. And I know a lot of people talking about, oh, scale, scale, scale. You can scale and still be stressed out, but to be a high level leader, you can scale, but you are focusing on the structure instead of the stress. So you're really moving from the shift is really you moving from just an operator to an orchestrator, and you're moving from execution focused to ecosystem minded. And I know that in previous episodes we talked about there being an execution gap, but when you are looking at your mental landscape of the things that you are responsible for, it is not just you yourself as a CEO that's focusing on the execution. You are now looking at the big picture, like I said, that whole landscape visually, that mental landscape of what needs to be done in your organization. So these are the questions you can ask yourself. Do you want to increase your influence? Do you want to stop acting like the most reliable team member? And then you want to make sure that you want to start thinking like the CEO of performance in itself, right? Not just in title only. So we're going to talk about the system, which is the power shift model. And here's the upgraded power shift model. We talked about a little bit of this in season 1. But now we're taking a deeper dive in this season, because we're really focusing on the executive power. So the mental framework that every executive needs if they're serious about scaling and scaling without the stress. Now, this doesn't mean that everything is going to be simple. You're never going to have like a breakdown or anything, but you're not going to feel that weight. You may feel a little pressure. So I don't want to sell you a lie. There are so many people like, oh, scale, without breaking a sweat, or scale with ease and things like that. It's going to be some pressure. That's what growth happens, right? But you don't have to have that breakdown and that stress. You know the difference between, oh, a little pressure is good versus that unbearable stress. So the first thing you need to do in the power shift model, or I invite you to do, is to move from executor to engineer. So if your organization needs your hands in every single detail, you did not build a business, or you're not the CEO of that particular business. Whether, like I said, if you're the CEO of a major company or you are the CEO of your business, if you're whatever you're doing, it needs your hand in every detail. You did not build a business. You built a dependency model. How many of you, if you're honest, you have a dependency issue within your team or your organization? The second shift that needs to happen is moving from manager to multiplier. And you can do either, excuse me, you can either do the work yourself, or you can grow the people that can do it. So you got to choose one. Either you do it by yourself, or you can grow the people and empower them to do those things. That's what a multiplier does. Managers, there's a reason why there's a hierarchy in terms of rank, because managers who are exceptional at what they do, they manage, and they do the work, they make sure things get done. But when you're moving at that higher level, you now have to make sure that you get the people to do those things, and you're in a sense like you're duplicating yourself, or you're making sure a system is in place to be duplicated or replicated through a person. That is the difference. Another shift that needs to happen is moving from firefighter to forecaster. So leadership is not about crisis management. I hear this all the time. People are, when I'm on these calls or when I'm in masterminds, or talking to business owners or executives, they're like, well, I gotta go put out this fire, or had to check on my email to make sure all of this was together. And I was like, well, I thought you were at this higher level. Why are you still doing all of those things? Because they're operating in crisis management, because it goes back to those other things. There's something that's not in place for you to still be operating as a firefighter. If you're at a certain level, that is no longer your task. So at this point, it is about preventing the next fire before it starts. And yes, that is very possible. And that's why we shift from only focus on productivity to predictability, because that doesn't mean that nothing ever comes up, but then you have things in place to deal with those things as they come up. And that's what a forecaster does. The next shift that needs to occur in this power shift model is moving from ownership to orchestration. We talked about that a little bit, but from ownership. Now, I know especially if you are the CEO and you built this company, you're the founder, you started this, that's your baby, you love it. And so it's like, it's yours, you want to be a part of every single thing. And even if you are a CEO of a major company, and if you came in and did a whole turnaround thing, and now the company is thriving under your leadership, it's like you want to own what's happening. But in order for you to go to the next level, you now have to move to orchestration. And like I said, I know control feels good, but the systems don't care about your feelings. And that is something that I've seen over and over again, whether I was working at the education level or with high level executives at different companies. You have to get out of your feelings, right? So, yes, control is about your feelings. But when you put the systems in place, the systems are going to work whether you like them or not, whether you're happy or sad that day. The system is going to system, right? So they don't care about your feelings. So the goal is infrastructure that wins without you in the room. I've said this before, but I heard a parent say this. Tracy Hensel, she's on YouTube, and I watch her from time to time, especially about goal setting. And she raised 5 kids while I think she was still working at the time, and her husband. And I think she was working and starting a business. I can't remember, but either way, she raised 5 girls. And she said from the beginning, she always wanted to make sure that she phased herself out of a job. And at first, I was like, "What? You're supposed to be a parent for life, and you're supposed to be really involved." But when I really looked at what she was saying, she was like, she started putting systems in place with her girls really early on, because her main goal was to make sure that they become self-sufficient, productive citizens that can do whatever they need to do on their own. Now, of course, they are there for their parents are there for their support system, but she had to build these capable adults, and it started really young. So think about it like that. And it's not that she's not needed. And that was the key thing. So you yourself going to this level, you're phasing yourself out of these jobs so that you can continue to do those high level tasks. You probably don't even know what you're capable of because you're so focused on ownership instead of orchestration. So, excuse me. And so now to get to the strategic edge, you have to know that, well, I want you to say this, or I want you to understand this. You don't have a leadership problem. And there is so much money being spent on leadership development. And of course, I have things available, to come in and do those things, but it's not about training. And I know you're probably saying, well, I thought you were like a culture consultant. Why are you telling people it's not a training problem? Because billions and billions of dollars are spent on leadership development in some aspect every year, especially in the United States. So it's not necessarily a leadership problem. What it is, though, it is a thinking problem. And you have to understand how to think in different ways. And that doesn't mean that you're not smart, you're not capable, all those things. It just requires a different shift. And that's where true consultants and coaches come in, and advisors, and work on that thinking problem. So I'm gonna put this out there for free, a bonus. If you are hiring someone and they just talk about training, then don't hire them, because you don't need any more training. You need people to help you and your team focus on how to think at a higher level. All right. So you've been praised for being dependable for so long. And this is why you think it's a leadership problem versus a thinking problem, because people said, oh, I can rely on them. They get the job done. And, you just put your head down and you're a good little worker, right? So that's what you were praised for doing. But then you forgot the goal is to not be needed when you get to a certain level. Look at any videos on YouTube about high level CEOs, even like I said, it's not just about the entrepreneur in itself. It's also if you are working in a major corporation and you are the CEO, when you listen to them, they're like, I don't want to be needed. Only call me X, Y, and Z, because they are focusing on higher level problems. That doesn't mean you don't need to know what's going on in your organization, but you don't have to be fully involved. And that's where you need the support system and the training, that particular training to help you shift to that way of thinking. And then you need to understand that the goal is to build something that works without you. Again, you're phasing yourself out of a job, not out of employment or not out of your role as the owner of the company or the CEO. That's not it, because when you look at what you're supposed to be doing as a CEO, there are so many other things that will occupy your time, but you're not able to do that because you're still feeling like they can't do it without me. And that means you haven't done the part of leadership, which is to cultivate people. So you're not here to chase inboxes and chase people. You are here to architect systems, influence outcomes, and build operations that run off intelligence and not adrenaline. If you're feeling yourself constantly stressed out and burned out, now I'm a doctor, but I'm not that kind of doctor. I'm pretty sure that's your cortisol or your adrenal gland. Something is working overtime, and and it's causing something, this nervous system attack in your body if you're feeling a certain way, because you're supposed to be operating off the intelligence part and not the adrenaline. So if you are nodding along or if something resonated with you, I don't just want you to hear what I'm talking about. I want you to be able to measure this. So I have for you the Leadership Intelligence and Resilience Index. You'll hear me often say the LII, or the Leadership Intelligence Index, and you'll see exactly where your leadership system is leaking, and then where you need to delegate and where you need to scale. So the information is in the description box or in my feature section, but you can go to drvernitaglenn-white.com/leader index. And when you do that, you will get a diagnostic of your current leadership level. It is really about 5 areas, and I talked about that at the beginning of this season. But you'll get a current landscape, about 5 core buckets for leadership, and then you'll see your immediate blind spots. And then you'll have an invitation to explore solutions through consulting, speaking, or strategic partnerships. That is up to you. But if you decide to take it, it's about 5 to 7 minutes. And it is enough information in there for you to at least get started, to see, oh my gosh, this is where our breakdown is, or we're doing pretty good. Let's double down on this. So it is a range of things for you to look at. So think of it as an awareness tool. It's not a deep dive assessment, but it is an awareness tool, and it's a starting point. So if you are the decision maker and you want to stop leading through effort and start leading through an ecosystem, make sure you go ahead and take that leadership index, the Leadership Intelligence Index, and you can go to drvernitaglenn-white.com/leader index. All right. So again, if you are resonating with this episode, I want to remind you that you have been listening to The Remarkable Edge, which is, in this series, this is the Executive Power Series, where we don't chase titles, we build systems that outperform those titles. This is where execution gaps get closed, okay? And where leadership becomes infrastructure. So not just influence, but also infrastructure. So be sure to take the Leadership Intelligence Index and make sure that you're able to audit whatever leadership model you are currently using, and see if you're able to scale that. And then start building your leadership that scales with or without your shadow. You can have both, but you just let me know which one it would be more beneficial for you, your overall health, and the overall health of your business or your company. So thank you so much for listening and learning with me. I'm Dr. Vernita Glenn-White. I go by Dr. V, the Brilliant Solutionist. And remember to stay sharp, stay strategic, and stop thinking like an employee your company no longer needs. So until next time, stay on your edge.